Hey guys, we're going to be getting started in just a couple minutes. I opened it up a couple minutes early so everybody could get in and make sure that everything works okay. And yes, Michael, I believe you beat Luann in. Just going to say something so you guys know the sound is working and you're not scrambling there trying to figure out why you can't hear me. Yeah. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. I see we still got people coming in, so we'll give a couple minutes here. Tonight we're going to be working on these clay baskets, doing clay weaving. Next week we're going to be doing the azure egg technique. Oh yeah, you can use the keyboard. I got it set up first. Use the mouse pad on the...
Okay. Oh, see that more into mystery box.
Or here, I can give you that and you can use it. And
I don't want to touch anything again.
Anyway, next week we'll be doing the azure egg technique. Tonight we're doing the basket technique. I'm going to show you guys how to do it with handles and without handles. Same technique, except we add a handle. And then I'll show you the leaves and stuff on here for those who did not see that webinar that I did where we did the leaves, or some of the other lives that we did where we did the leaves. So a couple things tonight. I don't know, people are probably already saying mystery box in there. I see that. If you're new to this, what we do is each live we have a mystery box, and I don't tell you specifically what's in that box, but I can tell you that what's in that box tonight, that it is new items. We keep adding a lot of new items to our website, so it's a medium flat rate box that's filled full of products. And if you think you want this later on during the live, we'll do a drawing. So anybody who puts in mystery box, Janine, my wife, is sitting across from me. She's frantically going through writing down the names of everybody who says they want a mystery box. She's putting it in a bowl, and we'll draw one name out, and that person will have the opportunity to buy the mystery box. The box is usually valued at over $100. It is valued over $100 tonight, and the mystery box is $50, and that includes shipping anywhere in the USA. If you're outside the US and you want the mystery box and your name gets drawn for the mystery box, I'll have to get you a shipping quote on the additional shipping to send it out of the country. But if you're in the US, $50 includes the shipping on there. Now, if we draw somebody's name and we open the box and they say, you know, that isn't something that I really want, we've usually got a lot more names in there. As you can see, everybody's saying mystery box on here. There's lots of other people, so we'll just draw another name. I don't want to stick anybody with something that they don't want. Throughout the night, as I show the technique, we're going to have commercial breaks. Normally I charge for webinars, and with the pandemic going on, we decided to do free lives, and I kind of rely on selling things as a result of it. So throughout the night, I'm going to show a few items. I'll show you guys at the end some new items that we're adding to the website, because we'll open the mystery box and you'll get to see all those. And so that's kind of the way that it's going to work. I'm just going to turn the volume down here, so every time a message or something comes in, it won't give us that loud ding. So I'm going to flip the camera down, and if you guys have questions as we're going tonight, just type them into the chat box. Janine will look for those comments to come up, and then she will try to get my attention and stop me, and I will try to answer those questions. All right, so we're going to flip this down here. All of the items, or most of the items that we're working with tonight, are available at my website, learnfiredarts.com. I'm going to move these samples out of the way here so I don't break them. And the technique that I'm going to show you guys tonight can be done really with any type of clay body. I'm going to be working with stoneware, but you can do this with low fire clay, you can do it with mid-range. I'm working with a mid-range clay. And what I like about that mid-range clay is that it has a little bit of sand in the clay, and so it kind of adds stability to that clay and a little bit of strength, so that when we're doing all of these coils, making these baskets, it is stronger and can stand. If you work with a real smooth clay body to do this, it'll work fine. It's just the clay isn't quite as firm, and so your piece is going to be a little bit kind of floppier as you're doing it. But it's fine. It will work just fine for that. All right. So I like to work inside of bowls, and so one of the first items that we've got, I'm going to show this right away, is we've got a set of these 3 bowls, and they are item number 2. So when you go into the website learnfiredarts.com, there is a section in there for the live events, and so all of the items that we use will be in there. They stay up there for a week with the number in front of them. Like this one will come up as item number 2. It's BP 900, and it's the 3 bowls, and it's $49.95. And I know people are going to ask how big they are, so I'm going to put the tape measure over the top here. This biggest bowl is a little over 13 inches. If you measure on the inside, it's right at 13. The next bowl is right around 11 inches, and the smaller bowl is about 9.5 inches, and they measure between about 6 and 7 inches high. And what I like about these bowls is that I can work on the inside, and I can also work on the outside of the bowl, and you can see my bowls have gotten used quite a bit. I've also used these, for those of you who do glass, as glass draping molds, and so you'll see somebody might ask why I've got these little holes in here, and that's to be able to let air out when I slump glass over the back side of these as well. I'm going to work with the medium bowl tonight because I think that will show up well in the camera, so I'm going to get rid of these other 2. And
there's a quick question.
Oh, quick question.
The Azure gold pen, does it have to be fired, and can it be put on fired glaze?
The Azure gold pen does not get fired, and it works well over the top of glaze, and it works well over the top of stains. It's very permanent. Using it over glaze, and next week I'll be showing using that pen, and there's other colors too. There's silver and copper and a rose gold as well. So anyway, I'm going to be working with the medium bowl, and we're going to be working on the inside. Now, some of you maybe have taken webinars from me in the past, and I've done the clay work on the outside of the bowl. And so I'm just going to explain. When I did this bowl without the handle, I did it on the outside of the bowl, and I can't lay this on here because of the leaves, but basically it was done on the outside. And because these bowls don't have real deep grooves and things in them and a real high foot, it's almost a flush bottom on here, it works really well. You can look at other bowl shapes. As long as they kind of taper out, they should work. And the reason I like to work on the outside is because you'll see once we start doing this technique is it's lifting up the coils that are going to be laid across here, and you lift them up to weave under and over and under and over. And on the outside of the bowl, it's very easy to lift them up like a wing and stick it under, lay it down, go over the next one, lift up. Where when you do it on the inside, we have to fold them inward on there, and it works fine. It just gets a little bit more congested, and the first part of it is the most challenging. Once you start working up the side of the bowl, it's a piece of cake to do that. But the reason when you're going to add a handle that I like to use the inside of the bowl is because when you work on the outside, we actually take and put a board over the bottom of this, and then we flip it over and we pull the bowl out, and our clay bowl stands free like this. Well, when that clay is soft and you need to add the handle, if I add the handle to something that just came off of that form, it's going to want to push it down and crush it with the weight of that handle. So by working on the inside, when we add the handle that's going to come up over on here, the pressure goes down onto the clay, but it's got the support of the bowl behind it. So I hope that makes sense of working on the inside and the outside. So we're going to add a handle tonight, so I'm going to work on the inside. Now, I normally work on top of banding wheel, and we've got these Amico banding wheels. And the reason I like working on a banding wheel, or if you have a turntable, is so that as you're doing this, you can easily turn this piece and not have to be lifting the bowl up and spinning it around. This will allow you to turn it as we weave the clay through. And the way that I'm turning it on the underside is I'm just taking my thumb and pushing and kind of, pulling back with my index finger as I turn that. These wheels are two pieces. Usually they stick together until you get them about that far off, and then it slams down. So be careful with those. And that is our item number 5, which is the banding wheel. And these are $39.95. They're a nice smooth banding wheel. You can put graphite or like WD-40 or an oil in here to get this to really turn really super well. You'll also see on the website we've got these rubber pads that work on top of the banding wheel, and that prevents pieces from slipping and sliding on there. So when I put these pieces on there, they don't want to shift and slide off. Because I'm working in the overhead camera, I'm going to use just a low banding wheel that I've got so that the piece is down and you can see that a little bit better. I'm actually going to have this other banding wheel right next to it so that I can put a board on here with my clay. I try to raise the clay up so that as I'm lifting the coils up that you'll see in a minute, I'm not lifting all the way from the low surface up onto the inside. By having them up close here, I'm not lifting and putting as much strain and stress on those. So the first thing though that I want to do is I want to create my coils of clay. Now you can roll coils of clay by hand, but I like to do it the easier way, and I like to use a clay extruder gun. So I'm just going to push this aside. And there are a couple different types of extruders. Some of you have probably seen this Kemper extruder. I use this one a lot in workshops. There is also the Shimpo extruder, which is now Nidec. They changed the company name. It was Shimpo Nidec, and now they just changed it to Nidec. So it's the same extruder, just a different sticker on there now. The main advantage to this bigger extruder is it holds more clay, and you don't have to load it as frequently. You can see it's a little over half the size of the gold Kemper extruder. What is nice about that is some people have a hard time squeezing that trigger, and so when you use the bigger one, you've got a lot more clay that you're forcing through that barrel. So some people, if they don't have a lot of strength in their hands, they find that shorter extruder is a little bit easier. They do come with different dies with each extruder. Tonight we're just working with one of the round dies that come with them, and so I'm going to work with the gold one just because it holds more clay. If you haven't worked with moist clay, it usually comes in a block like this. It should be soft. When you take your finger and you press into it, you should easily be able to dent that clay. If you push in it and you can hardly get a dent to go in there, and you push as hard as you can, and you really have to struggle to get a dent in there, chances are that clay is a little bit firm. And then what you can do is some people will take and put like a damp towel inside and wrap the clay, or they'll put damp paper towel, or they'll cut it in slices and put damp paper towel between each of the slices. One of the things that I do when I've got a whole block of clay that is really firm is I take a screwdriver and I poke holes all over in all sides of it. I stick it in a bucket of water overnight, a 5-gallon bucket, and then the next day I pull it out. But I leave it in the bag so that water just works its way into those holes that I poked in the clay, and that water kind of penetrates the clay and softens it. And then you have to kind of wedge the clay. It's like kneading dough to get that clay softened again. You want to be careful that you don't get it too wet. Don't leave that bag of clay sitting in the water for a week. Don't take the bag off of the clay. You just want the water going into those holes. You don't want this whole bag full of water and have the whole block of clay sitting in water, because it'll just turn the outsides to mush, and then the center will be firmer. But this is a good consistency. I can easily poke into this. Storing clay, put it in a cool, damp place. A basement works well. Some people will put the blocks of clay in a refrigerator. Don't put them in a real hot warehouse or out in your garage. If you're in Arizona and it gets to be, 100 plus degrees, or you're out in California and it gets really hot, try to keep it in a cool, damp place. Now there are,
What
question?
was the number on the set of bowls again?
It was, it's item number 2. So when you go into the live event specials, number 1 is first, number 2, number 3, number 1 is for the mystery box. So it'll be number 2. They'll all be in numeric order on there. And then there's lots of other stuff that don't have numbers in front of them, but that makes it easy. So the first 6 items I think you'll see tonight are the items that we're using in the live event.
And then is the bowl just a bisque bowl?
Yeah, that's just ceramic bisque, and the reason I like that is because it absorbs the moisture from the clay, but it doesn't stick like a plastic bowl or a glass bowl or a glaze bowl will do. So ceramic bisque will absorb the moisture, and we can leave that clay sitting inside that bowl for a long time. Now there are different types of clay cutters. You're probably used to just the wire on the sticks to cut through the clay. This one, many of you have seen me using it in the live events in the past. And this is an adjustable one that this bar slides up and down for cutting the thickness of the clay. Some of you are waiting for orders because we're waiting for more of these to come in. We've been selling a ton of those and just can't keep up. And so we've got another big shipment of those hopefully coming in soon. I got to call tomorrow and find out if they're on their way. But we just use that. The wire cuts through the clay, and I pull off my block of clay. I'm going to cut this in half just by pushing this straight through it.
Does your stoneware clay have grog to help hold it straight for the basket?
Yeah, this stoneware clay has mostly sand. If you get, so grog, for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with grog and sand, grog is basically busted up fire brick. And so grog is going to be a lot more coarse. And you have to be careful that you don't get a clay that has too much grog, because these are small coils, and if the clay has too much grog in it, as you go to bend the coils, they're really brittle and they break. So I like it with some sand in it. I'm working with Continental Clay's Buff Clay. I do sell clay on the website. I always encourage people to try and get clay locally, because the shipping on it is really expensive. But some of you have heard me tell in past lives, we figured out, somebody had shared with me that you can take a medium flat rate shipping box and you can fill that with 1 box or 1 block of clay, which is 25 pounds, or in a large flat rate box you can fit 2 blocks of clay for 50 pounds, and I'm sure the postal workers love it when I drop off those boxes of clay. So I've kind of created some tubes of clay here with those pieces that I cut off, and on the extruders they have a little lever on here that gets pushed in, and then this plunger gets pulled back, and when I pull that back, it releases the plunger on the inside. So as that goes back, as I pull it back, you can see that plunger is going deeper. So I'm going to pull this all the way out so that I can drop that tube of clay down inside.
Will a smaller extruder work with this technique because the strands will be shorter?
If you're talking one of those real little handheld ones that kind of fits in the palm of your hand, almost like a syringe, it will work, but those will give you such tiny coils that you would probably use those in a very small bowl. Your hand will get very sore if you try to do a big bowl like this, and a big bowl like this will be very, very fragile if the coils are, the diameter. The coils are probably half the diameter of this needle tool is kind of the biggest coil that you get out of those really mini extruders. So,
and then someone wants to know how much the extruder is.
Good question. So item number 3 is the Shimpo Extruder. We do have these in stock. I've got the Kemper Extruder on the website as well. We've got lots of these in stock. They're $58.95. It's item number 3, and there's free shipping anywhere in the U.S. This will fit in a medium flat rate shipping box, so there's free shipping on this. So the $58.95 covers the shipping on that as well. All right, so I've got my clay in there, and then I put the end back on here, and there's a die for a circle in here. and then I start squeezing the trigger. And most people want to hold this upright like this and squeeze the trigger like it's a gun. And my hands are big enough that I can do it that way. But a lot of times people have a hard time if their hands are smaller or if they've got arthritis and things, and they have a hard time with that. So I always encourage them to turn it around the other way, and you can get better leverage to really pull on this. And so as I squeeze this trigger or pull on it, it'll work out all of the air. Sometimes you'll get a little popping sound, and then you'll feel that coil start to come out the end. And every once in a while you can get a little bit of a popping sound that will come out with some air, and that's okay. But I'm going to extrude a big long coil, and I'm working on, there was a little pop and there was a little air bubble in there, and so my coil broke, and that's fine. I'm just going to continue squeezing out some coils.
Can you leave the greenware bowl in the bisque bowl for stability and then fire it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what I'm gonna do, and that's what I did on the bowl that I did, because picking these up and moving them can be scary because they can be kind of fragile. All right, so I've got a bunch of coils out here, and as I mentioned, we're gonna work on the inside of the bowl. So I'm going to move this over, and you can see here, I'll slide this over a little bit, my coils, and I mentioned that I was going to put these up on top of a banding wheel because otherwise I'm lifting it a lot higher and it's putting more stress on the coils there, and there's more chance that I'm going to break them. So I've got a board here that I'm going to place on top of my banding wheel, and then I'm going to put this foam pad on here, and this foam pad is just a piece of craft foam from the craft stores. You can get this at Michael's, you can get it at Hobby Lobby, Walmart. They come in 12 packs usually, and what I like about them is the clay doesn't stick to them, and it doesn't absorb the moisture, and it's smooth. So when I'm doing things like rolling slabs of clay or doing cutouts and things, I don't have to worry about it texturing like canvas can do.
What size is the disc for the extruder?
This one is, the disc that I'm using is the medium size hole, and I'll clean the end of this off so you can kind of see that. The Kemper extruder comes with 3 different size holes. There's a small, medium, and large. This is the medium. The Shimpo comes with a large, and then it comes with what I call the spaghetti one that does, I think, 9 holes. The large one in the Shimpo will work for this. If you're working with a smaller bowl, you'll want to take the blank die. So in the Shimpo extruder, there is a blank die, and that blank die is designed so that you can take and you can drill that with any size hole that you want. So these are all of the dies that come in the Shimpo extruder, and every live I open one of these up. I should just have one.
Oh, and the person asking about the small extruder before was talking about the Shimpo extruder.
Yeah, and that's the silver one that I've got here. So if the Shimpo one, you get this ribbon die, you get a triangle, you get, this is the large circle, and I'll kind of hold that up on the end of this. So this is going to be a little bit bigger than the one, get that, I'm looking at the screen trying to get this centered on top of there, and I keep going the wrong way. There we go. So it's a little bit bigger than the one that I'm using. So you can use that, especially if you're doing a bigger bowl and you want a stronger bowl, use that bigger coil. You also get, this is the spaghetti die, and I guess I was wrong, it's not 9 holes, it's 12. These, if I was doing a small bowl, I would use these, but it would be, you know, a real small bowl that I would probably use that size coil. And then you get a square shape die, and you get the blank. And so this blank, these are just aluminum. You can take a power drill and a drill bit, and you can drill whatever size hole you want inside of this disc. If you want to do multiple holes in there, you can do that as well. So just drill that with a smaller hole. We also have coming in, we were able to get this set of dies so that if you've got the Kemper extruder, the gold one, and you wanted the Shimpo dies, these dies will fit the Kemper extruder. We have these in stock of just these dies, And then we also have coming in at some point, they're on order, the dies that come with the Kemper extruder, which are a small, medium, and large circle, and then a blank also comes in that assortment as well. Any other questions at this point?
I don't think so. Well, Suzanne Randall said last week when we were doing the Duncan class, the clay was sticking to the rubber mat. It was horrible, but Drew Woodward saved the day.
Huh. I wonder what clay she was using, or if it was the clay must have been really wet if it was sticking to that mat, because I use those all the time in workshops. So what I'm doing now is I'm laying coils of clay across here. Sometimes I will get where there was a little air pocket in that coil, and I just kind of push that together, and I just drag my finger over to squish that in and fill in any little gaps. And I'm crisscrossing these, and so I kind of split it in half, then I split it in quarters, and then you can see that I'm going across, and I am adding and going in between each one of those. I'm leaving a little bit, find where my hand shows up on here, a little bit extra hanging over the edge. So an inch or two extra hanging over is good. And I'm going to continue to add these coils on the inside. And I'm not pressing them together at this point. I'm just loosely laying them in here. A couple more to go here. And when I get to the last section, I've got 2 sections left here. I'm going to put the coils in this section. And then when I get to the last section, instead of going all the way across with one long coil, I'm only going to fill in one section. I want an odd number of these coils sticking up. If I go all the way across, there will be some challenges with doing the weaving on here, and I'll show you when we start doing the weaving why it works best to do an odd number of coils in here. So I'm just going to break this one off, and I'm going to leave this side. Then I'm going to go on the bottom, and I'm going to press that together in the middle where all of those coils overlap. A lot of times I will work with a washcloth, because if you've got longer fingernails, you can get fingernail marks in here. And so I'll use a little washcloth because the texture of that towel leaves a little bit of a texture, and it also compresses those pieces together on the bottom. Now, normally with moist clay, you would do what's called scoring and putting slip to attach the pieces. But because we have that bisque bowl behind it, it's really easy to press it in the middle. If I was working on the outside of the bowl, I would do the exact same thing that I've done here. It would just be on the outside, and I would have an extra inch or two hanging off of the bottom. Normally that bowl would be set on top of something that would raise the bowl up off of the table a couple inches so that these coils could kind of dangle freely. So I might have a vase or something underneath this that's a little bit higher to raise that bowl off, and then I'd have it on the turntable so that it can turn freely, and I could just do this and do like a psychedelic thing and put you guys all to sleep and maybe hypnotize you. So this is my section here that was a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to take and kind of space these coils out a little bit so that my spacing is fairly even between all of these coils. And it doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to measure. It's not an exact science. And then we're going to start with the weaving. And this is where the very first, the bottom of the bowl, the weaving in here is a little bit more challenging because you're lifting every other coil and pulling it back to go underneath. So you want to make sure you do this while the clay is wet. I don't want to walk away and leave these coils sitting in this bowl for a half hour and then come back to work on it, even if I put plastic over it. If I put plastic over it, the bisque is still going to absorb moisture from the clay, and it's going to dry the clay out. It won't dry as quickly, but it will. So you want to plan for a time that you're going to be able to do this and be able to do the whole project. So I'm going to start out placing this coil on top of a coil, and then I'm going to take it, I'm going to lift the next one and go under, over, and this is why the banding wheel is so helpful with this, because I can just turn this wheel while I'm holding this coil of clay, and every other one I'm going to lift up. Now periodically, because it's naturally going to want to go out a ways away from it, I'll go back, and my hand is going to get in the way here, and I'm going to push these coils in so that they're a little bit tighter. And I don't want to get all the way around and then try to go back and push them in toward the center, because you'll have a lot of extra coil there, then it'll just start bunching up. So every couple I'll go back if I need to, and I'll kind of push those in. Now, some techniques for basket weaving, they'll actually work with, instead of using soft coils coming up the side, they'll have bisque strips of clay, and they'll have like a wood base that those little strips go into drilled holes. There's different techniques out there for clay weaving, and you can do that type of a technique as well. I found that this works really well for what I'm doing, but again, you need the clay to be soft when you're working with it. Now, the reason we went with an odd number of these coils sticking up is because what I would have to do if I had an even number is I would have to match up the coil where I started here. So this one would have to match up. I would have to break it off. I'd have to squish those together. But because I have an odd number, look at this. It's going under automatically. It's going under the one that I started on top of, and it will automatically, I'm going to push this in, it will automatically go the opposite because I've got an odd number of those. So I'm just going to continue to work my way around over and under and over and under.
Mike did a class one time, a webinar on this one time, and somehow he thought, remember that? Like, the
yes.
numbers did not, what were
and
you doing? I don't know
so
what
I ended up doing is I met up with that first coil in that live webinar. I met up with that, and then I was going the exact same way, and I was like, what is going wrong here? And I was like, and you know, when you're doing it live and something isn't working, it's very stressful. And I was like, okay, guys, just trust me. You need to have an odd number, but I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. And then I think during the live show, I think I kind of figured it out, or maybe it was actually later that night that I figured it out, and the next day. But that was kind of funny and embarrassing. Oh yeah, that's I figured Luann probably was the one who brought it up. Yeah.
We were baffled, I know.
It's always good to see me mess up, because people are always like, oh, you make it look so easy, and you know, I'm like, well, it is, but no, it is not. Everything is that easy, but when you do it enough times, it does look a lot easier. And you know, practice makes perfect. So you can see now, as I'm going around, it's getting a little bit easier to lift these coils because that bottom is done, and look at how much easier and faster this is to lift these coils as I do this. Now occasionally a piece might break off, and so I just take and kind of squish them together and mash that coil back together on there. Try not to use a lot of water at this point. You don't want these coils being sopping wet as you do this technique. And occasionally I'm going to go and I'm going to press this with a towel. I'm just going to get that last part of the coil pushed down. Now I ran out of coil here, so I've got one little piece here. I'm actually just going to take and squish this up. I'm going to reload my extruder, and I'm going to load some more clay in here and get some more longer coils. I don't like working with a lot of little pieces and piecing them together. I like to have the least amount of piecing together as possible. But occasionally the coils will break on you, and you have to do that. So I've got this reloaded, get the air squeezed out. And if you guys have a really hard time squeezing the trigger on that extruder, another little trick that I've shown, and I'm going to kind of lift the camera up here to show you this. So the plunger is pulled out on here. I will a lot of times put this on a surface, like on the table, so I will stand it up, and then I can go like this and push down on this trigger. My hand is flat, and I can push down on it. On the top of the extruder, as the clay starts to come out, as I'm pushing down on this, I want to put my hand there to kind of catch that coil and just prevent it from getting caught on the edge of the extruder. And so that's an easy way. If you have a hard time with that trigger on there, you can stand it up on a hard surface. A lot of times in workshops, I'll put that against like my belt on my waist, that plunger will go on my belt, and then I can use that as leverage to get pressure on there. All right, I've just about got all of this clay extruded out. Gets so much easier when you get to the end, when there isn't much clay left in the barrel. All right, so then I'm going to take the end of this and I'm going to press it into the end of that coil and just kind of squish them together. And if your clay is nice and fresh and soft, you should have no problem pressing that together. And I'm just going to continue to work my way around. And always remembering to kind of push these coils down. They don't have to fill in completely, but the tighter you want to make your weave, the more you're going to want to make sure that those are kind of pushed down. And I'm always kind of paying attention to how much space I've got between these coils, and I just want to make sure that I don't all of a sudden like work them way over and I've got a giant spot in between there. I kind of keep an eye on that as I go around and do the weaving. You can see how much easier this is when you're going up the side of the bowl than it is on the very bottom, and how much quicker this goes. I know somebody asked today on one of the posts if I would sell these in bisque, and I could, but the time that it takes to make these and the thought of shipping these in bisque, I think FedEx and USPS would have a field day breaking these, and we would have lots of claims for these baskets. One of the reasons I like to do them with stoneware clay versus low fire is that the stoneware is much more durable, and you can use stoneware clay and you can high fire it to bisque, to like a cone 5, cone 6, depending on the clay body that you're working with, and you can use stains on it. It just takes longer for those colors to dry, because if the clay is fired to maturity, it really closes up the pores, and what's called vitrified. The clay is vitrified, and so it won't really absorb moisture, and so it just takes a lot longer for the colors to dry on top. If I'm doing it with a stoneware glaze, you generally fire the pieces to an 04 like you would earthenware, and then your glaze firing is usually like a cone 5, cone 6.
How long can you leave it in the bowl to dry?
When you work on the inside of the bowl like this, I leave it in the bowl and I set the whole bowl right inside the kiln, and I fire it right inside the bowl during my bisque firing. So I don't have to try to pick this up and lift it and move it. That's one of the reasons that I really like working with these bowls. So if you use, a bowl that's glazed, or it's glass, or it's plastic, that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, because you're going to have to remove this from that bowl before you can fire it. With the bisque, these bisque bowls have been fired probably a couple dozen times a piece.
Someone has a friend who did a similar bowl a few months ago, and it's ready for a greenware firing, but now she wants to add leaves. Is it too late to add the leaves?
That's a good question. So the leaves, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. You can add the leaves while the clay is wet and actually attach them with slip, or you can make the leaves and just lay them off separately and then glue them on after they're painted. You can lay them on top. If you do it with glaze, you can just lay the leaves across the top then and fuse them onto the surface. I find it easier to paint the pieces when I make the leaves separate and I don't attach them. But on this particular bowl, and I'm just going to try to get this under the camera, it wasn't difficult to get in to these leaves and from the underside to get to the leaves. I didn't even do greens on the underside of these. But sometimes it's easier if these leaves are separate. So because her bowl is already dried, you can't go and add wet clay leaves on top of dry clay, because what happens is the clay shrinks as it dries. So with it shrinking, if you put wet leaves on there, as they dry, they're going to shrink. The bowl isn't going to shrink, and the leaves are probably just going to fall off. So she'd be best to make the clay leaves. She can kind of lay them across the top of the bowl to get kind of some bends and twists to them so that they're not so flat, and then let them dry, remove them from the bowl, fire them separately, and then when, if she's going to glaze it, just do lay the pieces on there and let the glaze fuse them on. Or you can glaze and fire them separately, or do them in stains and dry brush them, and then glue them on. And usually when I glue leaves and things on after, I put a piece of tape on there to hold them in place until the glue is dry, and then I'll remove the tape and your leaves are stuck on.
Suzanne Randall wants to know if you're going to do a commercial about the bowl molds, but she might have...
Oh, you might have missed that in the beginning. So the bowl molds on the website, Susan, they are Suzanne, they're BP 900, and it's item number 2. So, and I'm not sure if you've been in for some of the original lives that we did. You actually put in the comments that you wanted items, and now we just have everything set up on the website, so you can go into the website at any time and you can place the orders, and so we kind of numbered everything.
Can you paint each coil before you put it together, or would it be too messy?
Oh goodness, that's a good question. I don't think I would probably want to paint each coil. If I was using an underglaze, I could do that, Jenny, but...
That's actually Jeannie.
Oh, okay. Oh, I just saw Jenny. Saw Jenny. Can I put a wet towel? Okay, sorry. If I sat there and painted each one of those coils, they would probably get kind of dried up, and I would have a hard time working with them. I like to get this put together kind of quickly so that the clay doesn't get too dry.
And then Jenny wants to know if you could put a wet paper towel over the top while you make the leaves.
A wet paper towel over the top while you make the leaves.
I think referring to the...
Yeah, so if the dry piece and you wanted to kind of redampen that clay, you could, but I think what would happen, Jenny, is the clay would get wet, but I don't think it would, it's already shrunk, and I don't think it would expand, and so when those leaves dried, they still would shrink more than those coils that had already dried, even if you remoistened them. So I'm not sure that the leaves would stick. They would probably stick, but then as they dried, they probably still would shrink more than the clay would on the bowl itself, or on the woven bowl. That's a good question, though. All right, I'm just reloading my extruder with more clay. So to give you an idea, this is the medium bowl, and I've reloaded the extruder, or I've loaded the extruder. This is the 3rd time filling this with clay.
Someone has a few sizes of bowls that she uses for slumping glass. Would those work for this?
Yeah, as long as they taper out, which they should if they were for glass slumping. Just be careful that if you do it on the outside, some of those bowls will have an unusually high foot on them. And so if you're pressing the coils over the top of that foot, a lot of times it'll get thin in that area, and it might want to make some breaks in the coils on you.
Could you mix some type of color into the clay before you put it into the extruder to give up some color, maybe an underglaze or a type of powder color?
You could. There are, I've experimented with adding underglazes, like one-stroke underglazes, to the clay, but you have to mash it into the clay. So what I found was putting that clay into a plastic Ziploc bag and then really mushing it, and I've got some leaves here, really mushing it and squishing it and pinching it and things, that you can work that color into the clay. There are marbleizing techniques where you can do kind of a similar thing, where you add color and then you kind of twist and roll the clay and do things like that. There are also powders out there. A lot of the pottery supply places have different types of powders that can be added to clay for coloring them, different oxides and things that can go in there. So yeah, you could actually tint the clay that way, but I found that adding wet color like underglaze to the clay, I ended up having a big mess with the clay because it was all over. Then the color is all over your hands. It gets all over your mold or your bowl that you're working with. And then the next time you go to use it, you've got all of that color that you've got to clean off of everything. So the brown bowl that I've got. Oh, is there another question? And then
I think this was before you just started, right, on this last coil. But on the last coil you were weaving, did you pinch it to the coil on the side wall coil?
No, I haven't pinched anything yet. And in a minute, I'm going to go over with the towel and kind of pinch these coils, because once we get to this top part, we want to have extra support for adding this handle. So there's going to be a lot of coils at the top. But I'm going to take, once I get to the top, and you can do this as you're building this if you feel better about doing it, but I'll take my towel and I'll just kind of go over and gently press these coils, and it kind of attaches them together. I'm not pressing so hard that I'm losing the roundness of the coil, but it's helping to add some strength inside here.
Are mason stains too concentrated for tinting?
No, mason stains are, I couldn't think of the name of them, but yeah, that's one of the things that you could use for tinting the clay. But they are, a lot of them are really potent, and they can really stain things depending on the colors that you're working with. So now I've kind of compressed those coils, and I'm going to continue to go around the top here, and as I work my way around the top, I want my coils to really be compressed together, because we're going to be adding that handle, and if you have a lot of space between these at the top and you don't have a lot of coils that are kind of compressed together, if I put that handle on there, it's going to want to put weight right in that area, and it's going to compress those coils in that area. So I'm going to go around several times on the top here and just make sure that I've got a really nice tight weave. And that's one of the reasons that we have these coils a little bit longer. And then I'm going to show you after this what we're going to do to...
Another question about mixing. Would Paula's PCs work for mixing in the clay?
Yeah, so Paula's color concentrates could be mixed into the clay, and that's where I was talking about using the liquid color, using like a one-stroke underglaze. But it makes your clay really wet, and it's messy. I mean, I'll be honest, it was really messy, and my hands were full of color, and my mold was full of color.
Someone said they usually dry the clay, slake it down, add the mason stain or underglaze, then dry it out like 3 feet and knead it in to color it. That's the only way they found to get it really even.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, you have to wedge that color into the clay, and the reason I used a Ziploc bag with the wet clay was to kind of keep the mess inside the bag, because that color, if you use wet color like Paula's color concentrates, they're very concentrated, but if you don't mix it well, you're going to get kind of a marbleized effect, which can be kind of cool. All right, there we go. A couple of these are, whoops, somewhere here I messed up.
It's okay, Amy, it's not too late.
Oh, somebody for mystery box?
Yeah.
All right, so I think I've got enough coils on the top. I'm just breaking this off here. I'm going to go back again, and I'm going to just gently kind of compress these coils down. And I don't want to press so hard, especially at the top here, that the clay goes over the edge and I get a big dent in the side of that coil.
Someone wants to know what slaking is. I don't know if you want to explain that, or if the person who said they do it wants to explain it, and like they could type it in.
Yeah, if Jean wants to kind of type in what the slaking is. I know I've done...
Talissa who did
okay.
who does it.
Oh, okay.
Talissa, maybe you can explain a little bit about what that means.
Now I'm going to slide this over. So these coils that are sticking out on the top, we want to kind of weave those into this design. And so like this one here is coming over the top of this coil. So I want to take this and I want to kind of break off the end of it so that it's not too long. And I'm going to tuck that in. And I'm going to work my way around and have the coils going over the top as they come in. So every other one is going to go the opposite direction as I work my way around here.
Someone wants to know if they could mix. They have mixed ash from Mount St. Helens. Could it be mixed in the clay?
You could mix ash in, and I think you'll get some different looks with that, of probably some grays and some blacks and things in your clay.
And then, isn't there stains and glazes that will give the same effect as trying to mix in the clay? I mean,
yeah, so
afterward.
Yeah, and I'll kind of explain to you guys what I did on the basket that I've got back there for my coloring on it. I just did this brown basket was done with stroke and coat, and I thinned down stroke and coat to about half water, half color, brushed it on over the entire basket, and then I wiped it back with a sponge. So you see a little bit of the natural clay color. You can clear glaze it or you can leave it without clear glaze. And then you'll see there's little black specks on there. That's color concentrate. Just taking a fan brush and flicking, or a toothbrush or a splatter brush, and speckling it with a little bit of that black on there. And I found that that was a very easy, quick technique. I did it over some paper so that when I brush that color on there, because it's real watered down, it gets into all the crevices and things. You don't have white areas. So you're doing basically a wash on there. I also did it over the top of the leaves. My leaves, I put them on here while it was wet. I added those leaves on. You can see the brown is like antiquing on the leaves. And on the underside of the leaves, I mentioned I didn't even really worry about the bottoms because I've got that brown wash on the bottoms of the leaves. So you don't see bare bisque sticking out anywhere on there. So I find doing the color washes is a lot easier and less messy than trying to actually tint the clay. And there are some brown clays and some different color. You know, you can do terracotta clay and it'll give you red color with that. And there are some stoneware bodies and things that have color in them that will give you a natural tint to the clay. Now I'm going to go, before I slide this back over, I'm just going to go with my towel and I'm going to go around now and kind of just compress all of this on the top. Again, I'm not squishing it so hard that I lose my coils, but I'm adding a little bit of that texture from the towel, and I'm just kind of pinching those coils together. And I don't want clay going over the edge of that bowl. If I see that, I'm just going back and I'm kind of pinching it in off of that edge on the bowl.
How close did you put the coils together? Can you place them one right on top of the others?
You can. I left some openings in there, but look at the top, how close I got them together to add some strength in there for adding that handle on. So you can leave as much space as you want. I find that you want a fairly tight weave, but if I wanted this to completely be closed in and not have any openings, as I put these coils in there, I would just push them in closer to one another. I like a little bit of an open look on there, but you can make it more of a closed look. I did try something when I made this other sample basket. I had an idea that in that extruder, the Shimpo extruder, you get this this kind of ribbon die that comes in there. So I thought, well, what if I do some round coils and then add kind of a thick ribbon die one in there? Well, the problem that I ran into is, remember we went with an odd number of coils crisscrossing. So as I went around and around and around, I ended up having to end my round coil, and then I had to start my flat coil, and I just wanted to go around one time. And when I got to the end, because there was an odd number, it didn't match up to going under and over because we needed to bring it to an end and connect it. So it ended up having to go over the top of 2 coils. I didn't like the way that looked, so I pulled that thick coil out of there. The other concern that I had is when pieces dry, if the coils some are real thick and some are real thin, you can have some issues with it drying where the thinner ones will dry quicker than the thick ones, and you can get some cracking. And I was a little concerned that that could happen with those as well, so I kind of avoided that. All right, I'm going to slide that aside for a minute. I'm going to bring the coils that I have left here down, and at this point I could add the leaves to this, and I'll show you guys the leaves after we do the handle. I'll show you how those are done. But I can take these coils, and I'm just going to kind of pull them apart here, and I need to figure out how high I want my handle to go on here. And I played around with different ideas of what I could put in here to build and stick it on there. It's going to want to flip and flop, and it's not going to hold its shape. So I looked at rubber balls. I looked at using some of the egg-shaped molds that I have, of setting one of those in there to make the handle area. And I actually found that balloons work best because as that clay firms up on the handle, you can just pop the balloon and you don't have to try to get that out of being wedged in there. I found with the half of the egg molds that it got a little tight on there if I didn't get it pulled out soon enough. So using a nice big balloon, and I'm going to blow this up. And depending on the size of bowl that you have will determine how big your balloon is going to be blown up. So this bowl, I obviously need to blow this up bigger. So that I'm going to just tie this off. Move these coils out of the way. I'll bring this back in here. So as this balloon sits inside here, I want it to be nice and big so my handle can come over the top. So blow up the balloon according to the size of your bowl. And I usually will put some towels in here. The balloon really doesn't stick much to this, but the bottom of the balloon is usually narrower, and sometimes it's a little too narrow, and I kind of need something in there to support that balloon. And so the towels that I'm putting in here, and these are dry towels, they're not wet, I put those in there to kind of fill in the gap between the balloon and the sponge. If I've got a really big gap in there, I'll use some sponges. And so I've got a bin full of sponges that I use a lot of times for support. So sometimes I have to put those in there, a couple of those. On this bowl, I really don't need to. A layer of towels around there kind of fills it in good for what I'm doing. Now I'm going to take a coil and I'm going to lay this across the top of the balloon to figure out how long this coil needs to be to go from this side over to the other side. And this chunk of coil that I have here isn't quite long enough, so I'm going to grab one that's longer. I've got a little air pocket in here. I'm going to fill that in before I go to pick that up. Anytime you see those little air pockets, just drag your hand across, and I'm going to measure this, and I'm going to break this off. Like this is, oops, not in the camera here, like this is where the end of my coil comes down, and I would break it off. I'm going to leave a couple extra inches on there, and I'm going to use this coil then as my guide for the rest of my coils. And I'm probably going to have to load the extruder gun one more time. But this is my coil here, and this end here is just a little bit longer than the camera view. And I'm going to take additional coils, and I'm going to lay them right next to it. I'm going to break them off so that they are the same size. Yeah, I figured that one would be a little too short. So I'm going to squish these up. I'm going to reload the extruder. The number of coils that you use on your handle will kind of be determined by how big your basket is and how thick you want your handle to be. I think I used 4 on my other basket, but I can do more coils than that if I need to. So let me get this reloaded. All right, we'll get some more coils out, and then we'll get our handle put together here. We'll show you guys the leaves, and then we will get to the mystery box. All right, I think I've got enough there to do couple more coils here. So again, lay these out next to them so that they're the same length. The reason I do a couple inches longer is because we're going to kind of roll these, and as you roll them together, you end up, it kind of shortens them a little bit, and you can always cut excess clay off of one of the ends, but you can't add to it. So I always go a couple inches longer, and I'm going to move this over here.
On the picture you posted today, wasn't the handle braided?
Yeah, so this is the first step to doing the braiding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this end, and I'm just going to start rolling this. And I'm just rolling it from the one end. I want to be careful because as you start to roll it, it's going to get tighter and tighter. If I just keep rolling it at this end, eventually it's probably going to break off right about here. So I need to periodically go and kind of lift this up, and now I've got a nice braid on this end. Now I'm going to start picking it up a little bit further down so that I can braid that next section. I'm going to slide this down. I'm going to grab it, twist it in this next section, and I'm always going back and making sure that what I've already braided has a nice braid. You don't want to do this so tight that you break the coils off. So when you start twisting this and you feel a lot of resistance, don't keep twisting from that end because you're just going to break that off. Always go and lift up further down, and then there will come a point where you're past the halfway point. You can start lifting from this other end and start braiding from this end.
I think she's thinking of it being traditionally like...
Oh, like braided like a... No, it's not braided like you would braid your hair. This is more of a twisted braid, yeah.
And then what type of clay are you using? Jessica was wondering.
Yeah, you might have gotten it a little bit late. This is a stoneware clay body that I'm working with, Jessica. It's a mid-range clay, but you can do this with any clay body. I find that a clay that has a little bit of sand in it works a little bit better than a clay that doesn't because it adds a little bit of strength and stability. Once I've got a nice twisted braid on there, I'm going to go and I want to compress this together a little bit, but I don't want to completely squish this and flatten out. So I'm just going to kind of gently roll this a little, and my fingers are kind of fanned out. If you've ever rolled coils by hand, if you go like this and roll a coil, it tends to turn into what I call a speed bump, where it's not round, it kind of makes it kind of squarish. And so doing this motion when you're rolling clay coils will usually prevent that from happening. So I'm just rolling enough to kind of compress these coils together so that when I pick it up, they don't just come apart. And that rolling will also usually lengthen it a little bit as well. Sometimes the twisting and the braiding will cause it to shrink a little bit. So that's another reason that I went a couple inches longer than I thought I needed. And I'm going to take then a needle tool. I've got my needle tool out here. And I'm going to cut the end of this because it's kind of rough on this end. So I'm going to cut that so I have a nice flat end. I'm going to pick this up, and and I'm going to put it on top of my balloon, and I'm going to drape it across the top and see where it ends up on the other side if I need to cut that other side. So I'm going to move this back in front of the camera.
Lisa thinks she can get Laguna clay near her, so do you know what kind of version she could ask for?
It depends if you want to do a mid-range or if you want to do a low fire. If you're doing a low fire, you're going to want to ask for like a low fire white, or you can work with a low fire red if you want color in the clay to start with. Ask for one that has a little bit of sand. Most low fire clays, there's a smooth version that has no sand, and then there are ones that have some sand in them, and you probably want the one that has a little bit of sand. All right.
Mid-range.
Yeah, and if you're working with mid-range, most mid-range clays have sand or grog in them. Tell them you don't want one that's real groggy, because as you extrude those coils, if there's so much grog in there, they're going to be really crunchy, and they're going to want to crack and break real easily. So my handle, I've got a few extra inches here. I'm just going to take my needle tool, or you can take a knife, and I'm going to cut it off where that handle is going to match up on there. And I've got it draped across the balloon. Let's see if I lift this camera here a little bit that you guys can see this a little bit better. This is one of the challenges. I'm going to see if I can raise the whole camera up. Sorry, it's going to wiggle a little bit as I loosen this on here. And it's as high as I can go. All right, so we've got that on there. Now, normally, I had mentioned earlier that when you go to put clay to clay, where you're just sticking it on, you're going to do what's called scoring. And so you can use a regular needle tool, you can use a toothpick. Some of you got that really cool new retractable scoring tool a couple weeks ago, this one that we now sell that pops out and has all those little things on there. And we're just going to scratch lines into the end of this, and then where it's going to attach on the basket, I'm going to scratch lines in there as well. And then as I turn this, I want to try and look at this and make sure that my handle is in the middle. And so I'll usually stand up and look over the top and make sure that my handle comes over the top and that it's not real off on there. I'll score the other side where I want to attach it, and then I'm going to use slip to attach those pieces together. And you want to make your slip using the clay that you're working with. So I have a little cup here that I had mixed up, and this is made with the same clay that I worked with. You can try to take wet clay and mix it with water. It doesn't work real well. I encourage you to try it, and then I encourage you to take clay and flatten it out ahead of time and pinch it out, let it dry up, and once it's dry, throw that in the water, and it dissolves really quickly. Wet clay does not dissolve. You have to really mash it and try to get that mixed in there. So I'm going to stir up my little bowl of slip here, and you want it to be kind of a creamy consistency. This had dried up from the other day, so I'm just mixing it, and sometimes you'll have a few lumps in there, but you want to have kind of a heavy cream consistency to that slip. It doesn't need to be paste. And I'm going to take some of that and I'm going to brush it on where I scored. And I'm going to take and wiggle. This is really hard to do in the camera. I'm going to try to tip this a little bit and not have it flop down. But where I've attached that on there, where I scored it, I'm kind of wiggling this to try to lock together those score marks. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm attaching the handle. I put some slip in there, and I kind of wiggle that handle to lock those score marks. And then I want to, again, look down from the top, and I'm going to stand over it to make sure that my handle is going straight and it's not way off to one side. And then I will turn it the other way, and now I'm looking at it this way to make sure that my handle, that the balloon is even, that it's not dented in one side. And that's one of the nice things about a balloon is it gives you that flexibility that I can push this and move it. But what's really nice is once this handle firms up, and it might be that I've got it sitting for an hour or two, and then I just pop the balloon. And so what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll just kind of wiggle the handle a little bit here and there to see how firm it is or how soft it is yet before I try to pop that balloon in there. And you can see that because this is fairly snug and tight on here, if I tried to do like a rubber ball, which I tried to do, I tried styrofoam balls, because you have to pull that out, you just risk breaking that handle. When you can just pop the balloon, it just makes it so much easier. And you know what? That scoring tool works really great for that tool. Any of them
Jessica's
will.
wondering about the tool. Is that on your website?
Yeah, this retractable scoring tool is on the website. We're out of them right now, but we'll have more coming in next week.
I'll post the website.
Yeah, Janine will post a link to the website. It's learnfiredarts.com. I've got it here too. The glare is kind of losing the fired part, but that is the website. And then there's a section in there that is the live specials. I'm going to show you guys a couple other new things that we added to the website. I've had a lot of people asking about dry brushes, and so we've got, this is a set of new brushes that we added to the website. These are hog bristle dry brushes. They're part of the big kids line, and a lot of you we had the packs of the flats and the rounds that were on sale. I think we had them on sale for $7.99. This is a new set that we added that has a flat, a round, smaller round, and two smaller flats that come in that set. And that's item number 6 in the live specials, and they're on sale for $7.99 for the set. And again, you can add any items that total $50 and within the US $48. It's automatically free shipping over $50. If you're in Hawaii or Alaska, if it fits into a flat rate, large, medium, or small box, it will ship for free to you as well, as long as it's over $50. If you're out of the US or in Alaska or Hawaii and it won't fit into a flat rate shipping box in Alaska and Hawaii, other countries, our website is set up to do the shipping based on your location. We've weighed and measured everything, so it figures out what'll fit into a package to calculate that shipping cost.
A couple questions about the handle. Will you be covering the handle to slow down its drying time to keep up with the basket drying time?
No, that's a good question. I don't need to slow down that drying on there. I'm going to let this sit in an area where there isn't a fan blowing on it, there isn't any air blowing on it. If you're worried about that, if you have a lot of air circulation, you could lay some plastic over it to slow that process. But the bisque of the bowl is absorbing the moisture from the clay. The towels that I have in here are absorbing the moisture from the inside. And this balloon is only going to stay in here for maybe a couple of hours before I pop that balloon.
And then someone asked how many coils you used, and then another person asked if it was 5.
I ended up, I believe I only used 4 on there, but depending on the size of your basket.
You might go have to look back at the video.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I used 4 on this one. I debated putting a 5th one in there, and I'm looking back at my basket that I did the other day, and I'm just grabbing it here to see how many coils. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's only 4 on this finished basket that I have as well. And so that kind of worked out well. Now, if I've got a smaller basket, I might only go with 3 coils. If I've got a bigger basket, I might go with 5 coils or 6 coils on that basket. I'm always so afraid in the bisque stage that I'm going to break it as I pick those pieces up. Any other questions at this point? Okay. The other thing that I want to show you guys with dry brushes, lots of people have asked about dry brushes, and so we put together this ultimate assortment of dry brushes. There's 36 different brushes in the assortment, combination of short handle, standard handle, flats, rounds, long rounds, short rounds. And one of the reasons we do this, as I don't list the exact sizes that come in that set, is because when we do these assortments, if we run out of one brush or like the color assortments. I know Jessica's in here and she's waiting for her colors. We ran out of 2 colors for those sets, and now we can't ship the sets out because we're waiting for those 2 colors to come in, which will be coming in soon. So with this assortment, we don't list the sizes on the website. It's an assortment of 36 brushes. So if, for example, we run out of this number 5 dry brush, we can put in a number 6 that's maybe a little bit bigger than this, and you're not going to know because you get such a nice variety. In this new set, and we're going to be doing individuals and smaller sets as well, but we just introduced this one. It's a $99 set of brushes, so it's between $2.50 and $3 a brush that you're paying for this assortment. You'll find that on the website as well. I'm going to show you guys doing the leaves, and so I use these rubber leaf forms for making my leaves, and I'll show you the berries and kind of explain this process. So the rubber leaf forms, and you can use real leaves to do this. I live in Wisconsin. Right now it is probably still below 0 outside. We've had a really cold snap with below 0 temperatures. I can't go outside and pick leaves this time of the year. So these rubber leaf forms that I have on the website, they have nice texture on them, and there's all different ones. There's mum leaves, there's dahlia, there's oak leaves, there's maple leaves, there are just kind of a traditional leaf. There's all different types of leaf forms. And so these work great. So one side is textured with a veining, the other side is smooth. We're going to work on the textured side, and we're going to take a piece of clay, and we're going to flatten it. And you can roll out a slab if you want to. I tend to just take and flatten a piece with my fingers. And I want it to be about the thickness of a cast piece. So between 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. You don't want to go super thin when you do these leaves because the clay will stick to the rubber leaf form if it's too thin. You need a little bit of thickness to it. Some people will press the leaf into it. I just kind of went with my fingers and pressed this in to get the texture into the clay. Some people will lay that down and they'll take a needle tool or a toothpick and they will cut around the edges of this. One of the reasons I don't like that and I don't encourage it in classes is because then they're all cutting through the foam mats that I've provided, or they're making indentations in there. So what I do, and I find it a lot quicker and easier, is I basically pull that clay upward and peel off the excess clay around that leaf form. It's going to give me a rough edge and it's going to be thick, and so that's the thickness that you want that leaf to be. Don't go super thin. If you go to peel the leaf off of the rubber form and it just rips and tears apart, you've got the clay too thin. But you don't want this thick, clunky looking leaf, and I've seen people do that too, where they just leave it like that and they peel it off and they have this really thick edge on there. So what I do after I pull and rip that clay off is I take my thumb and I kind of bevel this edge, and I'm kind of just pinching down, and you can see that it's beveling that edge. So my leaf is thin along the edge. I leave it thick at the very bottom of the leaf. I bevel down the other side. And the reason I leave it thick at the base is because it makes it really easy for me to grab that clay and peel it away from the leaf form, and I've got my clay leaf. So these leaves then, and I'm just going to grab this basket here. If I want to add leaf forms to the edge of my basket, I will take these leaves while the clay is wet, and I'll kind of form them around the edge. Now, if this was wet clay, I would score that area like I did with the handle. I would score the back of the leaf. I would put some slip in there, and I would attach the leaf. If I don't want to attach them, and I just want them to be loose so that it's easier to paint, and I fuse them on later, I'll just go around and lay the clay leaves randomly around on here, let it dry, take them off, fire them, because now they will be the shape that I want, and then after I paint them, I can lay them back on there, because if I have glaze on here and I have glaze on the leaf, that leaf is going to fuse when I do the glaze firing on there. If I want to add berries, there are a couple different ways that you can do berries. You can make just plain little berries by rolling little balls of clay in the palm of your hand, and then I will usually take the needle tool and I'll kind of poke a little indentation in, like where the stem would have been. And I can take and I can score and slip little berries on here and there on the leaves. If I want to make the, what I call, for like a, raspberry or blueberry, which are these guys here with that kind of fun, cool texture, versus the smooth berries, like these. That is done using a piece of fabric, and I believe this is called tulle. And so this is, I buy this at the fabric store, and they don't sell it by the inch. They only sell it by the yard, and it's $5 a yard or something. It's really inexpensive. But this is like, I think, used like on dresses and things. It's kind of scratchy, and but it's got these openings in the fabric. And so I take and just do a small chunk of that, and this will last me a long, long time. And I'll start out with a little bit bigger ball of clay that I've rolled in my hand. I'll put that inside that netting, and then I kind of bring the netting around, and I wrap it around, so I've got it bunched up on this end, and I pinch, and then I turn it and I pinch, and the clay comes through that netting when I pinch it, almost like an extruder. Now I don't want it to be so long that when I open this up that those little pieces that came out get stuck in there, but I can open that up gently, peel that clay away, and I've got my textured berry, and there's usually a little bit of kind of a pointed stem on there. Sometimes I have to break a little bit of that off. I can score that, put a little slip in there, and add those berries anywhere that I want around on the bowl. So I'll show you guys this finished piece again. Okay. All right.
Back to the dry brush. Why is it called a dry brush?
So dry brush, there is a technique that is called dry brushing, where you're working with acrylic stains, and you basically do a base color, and then you go across the top, and you skim across the top with this stiff bristled, it's a hog bristle brush, and you get most of the paint out of the brush, and you skim across the top to add kind of highlights and build up color on there. I'll be doing a dry brushing technique in one of the lives coming up, probably in March. I'll be doing something with dry brushing. I'm actually going to take one of these baskets and do some dry brushing on those as well. Textured pieces work really well for dry brushing, but dry brushing is a technique of painting.
Okay, and then I'm not sure if you kind of maybe talked about this, but someone was asking about how they know if their order that they ordered last week has shipped.
If your order has shipped last week or not, you'll usually get a tracking number. Once it ships, it'll go to the email address that you put in on your order. And so you should get a tracking number from either USPS, from FedEx, and one that our website automatically generates once that ships. If it hasn't shipped, and we still have, I mean, we had probably over 100 orders that shipped out this week. What we're waiting for is the clay cutters. A few people's orders are waiting for that. We've got some orders that are waiting for some of the acrylic colors that are coming in. We've got one order waiting for a Shimpo Extruder, and Royal products just came in, and in fact, they sent us the same order twice. So I have double of everything, which is okay because I actually was running out of some stuff that we had, but they had a new person started, and she entered my order one day, and then 2 days later she accidentally entered the exact same order, and I got an order in, and I was like, wow, why did I reorder all of the same items? And then I checked, and she had done that. So
if they haven't gotten an email,
yeah, and who was it that, because I
Kidwell. I just wanted you to let her know after the live. But.
Okay, yeah, and I want to say yours, maybe there was a bunch of stuff went out FedEx today, and I think it may have gone out, but I'll double check after the live. If I forget, just mess it. Okay, Janine wrote a note. Yep, she knows how I am with remembering things.
Let's see. Do you have a kit of assorted leaves for sale?
Yes, we do have a kit of assorted leaves, and I was just going to show that as one of the other items. So On the website, item number 4 is the LA100, and that has all of the small leaves in it. It has the more leaves than I even used here tonight. It has what are called the lemon leaves. I consider these traditional leaves. There's 4 of those. There are pumpkin leaves in here. There's 3 different ones. There's 4 different mum leaves. There are strawberry leaves. I'm going to be doing a live on strawberries. Those are kind of fun to do. There's the dahlia leaves. There are, oh, this is interesting. These are the grape. Well, that's funny. This is the grape leaf, but there's a mum leaf and a dahlia leaf in this one. I got to set that one aside. There should be 3 different grape leaves in here, and there's 2 grape leaves and 2 random leaves got into that assortment. There are the mum leaves and then the oak leaves, and you get that whole assortment, and that one is on special for $75. I think they're normally like $89.99 for the leaves separately. The leaves are also sold individually on the website if you don't want the whole assortment. I think they're about $12 a piece for each bag. So that assortment is number 4, LA100 for $75 is on the website.
Okay. What paints did you use for the finished basket you're showing?
The finished basket, that was all done with stroke and coat. I did that wash with the brown, and it was Java Bean, I believe, was the brown that I used, watered down. I did it over the whole thing, wiped it back with a sponge, and then I went back with stroke and coat, and I used like 2 or 3 different shades of green on the leaves. So there was that brown wash was on there, and then I just brushed 1 coat of, like, I did a darker green here, I did a lighter green, and I kind of brushed them wet into wet, 1 coat, so that the brown still showed through, and I just tried to mix it up. So some of the leaves are a little bit lighter, use some lighter greens, sometimes I'll put a little yellow in there. I can see on this leaf there's a little bit of yellow on that leaf, and then the berries are done with 1 coat of red, like that's hot tamale, the purple I think is fruit of the vine, and then I went back with the black and added veining and did that little speckling over the entire basket. Oops, I'm going to break it here.
Couple last minute mystery box entries and probably...
All right, so if you didn't get in on the mystery box, speak up now, because that's going to be the next thing. Well, Janine writes the last couple. I'm just going to talk about next week. So next week we're going to be doing the Azure technique, and this is on eggs. These are really fun to do. This is done over something that's been clear glazed. It'll work over stains as well, but I do like to work over the top of glaze. Gives me a really nice, shiny, slick surface. And these are alcohol markers, and of course we'll have specials on these next week as well, but there's all different colors. There's different methods and techniques to it. If you were in the live, is that 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks? Might have been last week. Yeah, the underglaze layering, that was last week. These are some of the marbleized eggs. They look great in these baskets too. So, but we're going to be doing the Azure technique next week. That's them done on top of eggs. And the same technique can be done on other pieces. I've actually done Christmas trees with this. This is actually a plate from the dollar store. This is decorative only. It doesn't get fired, but that's kind of fun to do on the banding wheel using the markers. And this is doing a vase with that technique too. And this is the metallic marker. Somebody was asking about the gold metallic marker. This is the silver marker on this one. We use the copper marker on the edge of this plate. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. And then the week after that, we're doing clay eggs that will also go in these baskets. And we've got a really exciting thing that we're going to be doing that night. We're going to have the most mystery boxes ever. All right, so we've got the mystery box tonight. Janine has everybody's names in a bowl here. We're going to draw out a name. I'm mixing them up here. And we drew Cheryl Pugh. If you're in here, Cheryl, let us know that you're still in here. And we're going to open this box up. If Cheryl decides she doesn't want it, we will draw another name. So as soon as you see what's in there, Cheryl, just type in that you want that box. And so I mentioned that tonight's box is all kinds of new items that we've added to the website. We're adding lots of new stuff every week. We've got a lot of new stencils. A lot of you already found these. We've had a lot of these stencils going out in 2 weeks. after I do, or next week is Azure, then we're doing clay eggs, and the following week I'm going to be showing you guys how to use stencils on ceramics. So that'll be in 3 weeks, I guess, that we'll be using the stencils. Okay. So you got one of the new stencils.
You said yes.
All right. This brush is kind of interesting. Look at the length of that handle on there, and you might be like, why would I need a handle that's that long? Do you know how many times I have been trying to get glaze down inside something that's deep in a vase, in a bowl, and I can't, with a standard handle brush, I can't reach the bottom, and I'm forever dropping the brush in there. This brush is a blend of natural and synthetic hair, so it's got a spring to it of natural hair, but it's got a firmness. So if you're glazing the inside of something that's deep, this longer handle gets down in there and can really move that color around. So this is a new brush that we're adding to the website. I had somebody asking not too long ago, and I don't think I got back to the person because I can't remember who it is or where they posted it, but they were asking if we had these wood sculpting tools. We have the basic pottery set on our website, and we did add these wood sculpting tools that have some different shapes that don't come in the standard set. This may seem really simple, but the sponges for cleaning greenware and things, I was kind of surprised that we didn't have those on the website. These aren't up there yet. They will be added soon. The big sea sponges, we've added some larger sizes of sea sponges. These will be going up on the website soon. Hole cutters. For those of you that do trees or do clay work and you want to cut designs out, there are 2 different types of hole cutters that we have on the site. This one is probably the most traditional. It is a closed hole, and so if you've got Christmas trees that you're doing lights, or you're making a clay piece and want to poke openings in there, these get poked into the clay to put the holes. The thing with these are sometimes the clay gets stuck in there. So there's another option of these that are open, and these have more of a sharp tip on them. These I like because these you poke in and you twist and it cuts a perfect hole in there, but if the clay gets stuck on there, you can easily slide it off because these are semicircle hole cutters. And so there's a set of each of those in there for Cheryl. Oh, look, a new set of those dry brushes are in there that I talked about earlier. Those of you who took our live event, we had the Moderna, the 10-aught liner. We've now added, I had some people asking for one that's even finer. This is a 20-aught liner. This will be going up on the website soon. We do have those in stock, so it's a little bit finer than the one that came with the eye painting kit. It's a great detail brush and for doing line work and design work. I've had people asking about chalks. These are pastel chalks. There's 36 different colors. I think these got added to the website today. They should be up there now. I'll be doing a live showing chalking techniques and how you can use these to color entire pieces and how you can use them for shading and blush and things like that. Unicorn brushes are back. These are an acrylic handle brush. These are a gold Taclon version with a really cool metallic handle. Great for acrylics and basic painting. They'll also work with underglazes and glazes, but this bristle is a little bit firmer than the mermaid brushes. Mermaid is a little bit softer, so this is better for glazes and underglazes. This is better for non-fired colors, so you got sets of those brushes. I've had a lot of people asking about brushes for kids, inexpensive brushes. This set of 7 brushes, it's got a couple flats, it's got a filbert, it's got an angular detail brush. This one I think is on special for like $4.99 on the site, and they're acrylic handles, so even if these get left in water, which a lot of times kids, and let's face it, as adults, we leave them in water sometimes, these have a little bit shorter handle. Adults love to use these brushes too. They're not just a kid's brush, they're a synthetic bristle, they're a good brush, and with that acrylic handle, you don't have to worry about them peeling and having paint flake off the handles. We've got some of our really good quality, couple of the dry brushes, a flat and a round. These are some of the new dry brushes that we've added. I showed you that 36-piece set. These are some of the sizes and shapes. There's a couple of those dry brushes in there. And then we've added, with people working at home, we've had people asking for just, they don't want the big bottles of acrylic paint. They want just a small sampling of acrylic paints. So this set is going to be getting added to the website in the next couple days. We've got these in stock. This comes with a really crappy brush. This is like the worst brush in the world that comes with it, but the paints are good quality, and it gives you a good variety of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 different colors that come in that set. So that's what's in the box. Hopefully Cheryl likes everything that she sees in there, and next week we'll have another mystery box with the live, and the following week after that, like I said, we're going to have the most mystery boxes ever. I'm going to be like Oprah that night with mystery boxes for everybody. So that'll be during the egg webinar in a couple of weeks. So just let us know, Cheryl. I know you kind of said, okay,
well,
so yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you didn't want it, we would draw another name out on there. So I'm going
There's a few
flip
questions
this
there
back
to
up.
go back a little
Okay,
bit.
so Janine said there's some questions.
Do the markers work similar to the liquid inks?
So the markers,
Those on glazed tile.
yeah, so the markers are similar to the inks. The advantage to the markers is they're contained in the marker. So instead of using like eyedroppers and dripping ink, you're actually coloring like a marker to do the technique. And then we use rubbing alcohol to get the colors to flow. And there's a blender marker that comes in there as well that has alcohol that you can use to do blending and removing color and adding textures and things.
Okay, and then the hole cutters, they're on your site, and
Yep.
someone asked how much they are, but maybe you don't have a price yet.
I want to say they're like $10 to $12 for the set of them. They're not real expensive.
What are you doing?
I'm just holding the egg up to give them something to look at instead of my face.
Okay, what are Menta brushes for, acrylic or glaze?
Menta brushes work best with glazes, so that ultimate assortment that we've got on the website, the Menta, those are best for glazes because they're a softer synthetic bristle.
I guess that's it.
All right, that's it for questions. All right, if you guys have other questions, type them in here. I'll be looking through this later on, and I'll answer any questions. You can always private message me as well. But I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight. Again, the live specials will be up there for 2 weeks. The specials from last week are still up there, and you'll see some other stuff that we've added in there too that I didn't number specifically. But go through the website. It always amazes me, people that place an order for like $38 and then they pay for shipping that's like $10 or $13, and their total is right about $50. So seriously, try to get like $50 worth of stuff. If you're up in that $30 range, you're going to pay $10 for shipping. You might as well get another $10 worth of free stuff and get over that $50 mark. But that is good only for those people in the U.S. So again, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to have Janine end the live video because she's got the mouse from me. So I'll have her end that. She's going to make sure there aren't any other questions. Oh, and for the mystery box, Cheryl, you'll go into the website, and item number 1 is pay by dollar amount. And so all you have to do is click on that and then put in 50 for the quantity, and it'll ring up $50, and then go through and just go through and pay for it that way. And then we'll get that shipped out to you.
Okay, I think I got everything. So, and when you were holding the egg up, someone said they didn't mind looking at your face. So.
Oh, nice.
All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, see you guys later. Have a good night. Thanks.